homes. Just for the benefit of those who are in the room, who weren't there, and those who are watching us on YouTube, we had a 2.25-hour Scrutiny Committee meeting, which finished at 2:45. There are a number of recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee, which I will refer to at the appropriate time. We welcome Councillor Galvin, who's standing in for the Green Group leader, Councillor Bergelein, and Councillor Ludwig, who's standing in for the leader of the Liberal Democrat Group, Councillor Wright. Welcome to both of you. If we go on to the agenda, can we have any apologies received for absence, which I suppose I may have alluded to in the case of opposition members?
We've had apologies from Councillor Jones, Chair.
Okay, apologies from Councillor Jones, that's noted.
Councillor Stollard.
And Councillor Stollard. Okay, so anybody else? No? Okay. So declarations of interest. Councillor Kendrick.
Firstly, to declare that Councillor Tennant and also the Director of Norwich MPS, therefore I will be staying for the second part of the meeting under the line.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kendrick. I think that also means that you won't be able to vote on the recommendations because you had to leave the room. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, okay. But do come back in after we go above the line to the recommendations. Councillor Harris.
Council House tenant and a director of Norwich North building, but that's a non-recurring interest, and I am allowed to stay and participate in everything in front of us.
Yeah, so we've taken advice from the monitoring officer on that, and I'm also declaring interest as a council tenant. Councillor Oliver.
Also a council tenant, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of interest? Do we have any public questions or petitions?
We have not.
We have not. So let's then move on to item 4 of our papers. That's on page 5, and Councillor Harris is going to introduce the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Firstly, may I start once again by sincerely apologising to our tenants and leaseholders that this report should have to be brought this afternoon, and for the worrying questions which the events of recent weeks will have caused. As a Cabinet member responsible for social housing, the safety of our homes is my #1 concern. I've been really frank about being personally and deeply upset by the findings of an internal review on safety checks across our council homes, which showed we have fallen short of what our tenants and leaseholders should be able to expect from us on compliance matters. But this is my opportunity to assure all my fellow Cabinet members that we are taking all the necessary steps to put things right. Our commitment to resolving this matter is unwavering. The urgent work programme that we already have in place to bring all compliance checks up to date is a priority for us and is underway. We will be open and transparent with the progress of that compliance work throughout, with regular compliance board meetings and progress reports to Cabinet. Looking ahead to the next few months, we will continue with our journey to transfer services, as we have progressively done across a number of areas of the Council over many years. All members in this chamber will be aware that the pace of this is rapidly increasing, and with good reason. With 2 of the Council's joint ventures with Norse coming back next April, that gives us the opportunity we have been working on for a number of years, taking back more direct control of the delivery of our repairs and maintenance and strategic property services. With the compliance programme already underway, our main focus should be ensuring we return to full compliance. I would like to thank the Scrutiny Committee, chaired expertly by Councillor James Wright, for the excellent piece of work he and his members achieved earlier this afternoon in considering and questioning the report before us now. It is better for the rigorous and forensic examination which he has achieved, and I accept the additional recommendations provided by the committee which are in front of us at the moment. In summary, we have a strategy in place to deliver the plan, along with details on making sure all the necessary finances are available to deliver that plan, something that we as councillors demand on behalf of constituents. I would urge all Cabinet members to support this paper and let us get on with the job ahead. Finally, I would like to particularly thank the Executive Director of Community Services for the way in which she has dealt with and continues to deal with this difficult and complex issue. I'm grateful to a team of people who, like myself, just want to get the problem sorted. This is a very detailed report which sets out the case fully, so there's no need for me to go through it line by line. But if you have any particular queries about any elements of the paper, either myself or Louise or some of the other team will be happy to address them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gail. I will just say how I plan to proceed with this afternoon's agenda. As has been noted, there is a below-the-line report, so we will discuss the above-the-line report when I feel, and at that point I will also refer to the recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee, and then we will go below the line. That means we will have to exclude the general public and the press. And when we've given good consideration to that, then we will come back and we will look at the recommendations of the report. But I'm going to give Louise an opportunity, if you wish, Louise, to make any points about the report that you have presented to us.
Thank you, Leader. No, nothing significant to add to Councillor House's introduction, but just to say to Members Chapman that the team and I are here to answer any questions. And for those people who don't know, Vivian Nibbs is Interim Housing Operations Director, sat behind me, and David Gleeson at the back is Interim Asset Consultant, both supporting with this work.
And with the Chief Executive and yourself, we have the other two Senior Directors in both schools, 151 Officer and Graham Nelson, who does a range of things, including regeneration and so on. But this is it. So we've got a senior team of people here, and we also have our Head of Communications, Sharon Page, in the room. Okay. Right, so I'm going to open it, the report up for any questions. I'm going to take Cabinet members first, as I normally do. Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Alan. So I'm not sure this question is to Gail or to Lou, either of you. Can you explain how you'll gain access to the properties of tenants who previously refused entry? And how you'll work with tenants who are vulnerable and need additional support, so either family members or friends to be with them when the council attends to do the work. Thanks.
I think Vivian can probably explain the actual legalities of this situation, but I'll start off by saying that we're identifying the people who we know we have had issues getting into their properties. We're doing everything we can to support them, so it might be that we work with their support workers, could be a counsellor, could be a friend or family, but so we will do everything we can to make the process as easy as we can.
Thank you. Basically, the two areas that we specifically need to focus on in terms of getting into individual properties is the gas servicing and the electrical testing. The other areas of compliance are primarily in communal areas of blocks. We have a well-developed system for gaining access, which is basically the same at the start of the process for both gas servicing and electrical testing, which is that the contractor seeks to gain access and makes 3 attempts to do so. If they're unable to gain access during that time, and they still haven't at the end of that process, they pass the details of the property through to the housing team. And the housing team then make every effort to make access or create access by text messaging, telephoning, in visiting the property. If they're still unable to do so, that's when the situation slightly diverges, in that in the case of gas servicing, we seek to go to court to obtain a warrant to force entry to complete the service. And that's, we can do that under legislation in relation to the Gas Safety Installation Use Regulations 1998. In the situation where we can't gain access for electrical testing, the situation is slightly different, and we basically work with MP Law to seek an injunction to be able to gain access to carry out the necessary inspection and testing work of the electrical systems. Obviously, we seek to do everything we can to avoid having to do either of those things. But ultimately we take the responsibility very seriously, and we will go down those legal routes where we need to do so.
Thanks very much. Other questions, Cabinet members, at this stage? Okay. Judith? Did you want to ask a question, Judith? You haven't got a question?
I haven't got a question.
Well, that's fine, because I've asked you if you'd like to speak first.
I wasn't privy to the scrutiny deliberations this afternoon, so forgive me if this has actually already been discussed. It's about how long had there been a failure of compliance. During the review and the subsequent investigations, has it been possible to say when compliance for the housing was last carried out to a satisfactory standard, including any necessary follow-up work?
Thank you. No? Or...
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. It varies across each of the main areas. So with electrical inspections, as you see from the report, we've got a number of those outstanding. Some of those are over more than 5 years, some are at a 10-year period, so it varies from area to area. And we're prioritising the oldest of those first, and some of those will most probably have been done by now. In other areas, so fire risk assessments in tower blocks, for example, some of those were just falling out of date, so the length of time is much shorter. For water hygiene inspection testing, then some of those inspections go back to 2016 and 2017. With gas, we've described gas compliance is up to date and is running very well. So there's a kind of a varied picture across the whole programme of compliance management. In terms of follow-up works, that's one of the areas that we've identified where there are issues that, and you will see in the report that Calcasieu, who've done some work for us in looking at this, have identified that there wasn't a robust system in place to kind of check the remedial actions have been logged and that those works have been completed. So we're going through a process of identifying where those are, and also, of course, identifying some as part of new inspections and new checks and assessments.
Okay. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, do I get one question now, or how does it work?
When you get a question, we'll hear it from you. I'll use my discretion. What I won't have, I don't think, is not in the convention that we have around this. Several questions, and I'm aware of the fact that we've had pretty exhaustive discussion in scrutiny as well. So I'm taking that into account, which I think is not unreasonable, really, given that that's being aired on YouTube and press coverage has been given. But please ask your question.
Well, I want to make it clear that I want to assist people in sorting out this situation and assist officers and work cabinet and everyone to help sort this out first. I think that's really important to say. My question is, how can we make sure that Norwich City Council sort of mends its reputation around this, which is a really difficult and unpleasant issue, a nasty shock for everyone, and these checks haven't been carried out without a really good look at what happened. and I appreciate you describing scrutiny as a rigorous and forensic examination. I think it was sort of on the way to that, but my question is, do you really think 1 2-hour scrutiny session of this before this is enough to really understand democratically and openly what happened, to really mend the council's reputation around this, and to help council itself going forward? The actual administration, who, as you said earlier, own this, you own the problem, which again I appreciate you saying. So to really understand that, do we not need a bit more scrutiny going forward of what actually happened? Not wishing to waste officers' time, obviously, at all, but wishing to build and go forward. I think you get the gist of the question in that.
Yes, I understand your narrative approach on this, but the way you've framed your question is to suggest a static quality to what is a dynamic process, and the report itself lays out how rebuilding our reputation is to be achieved through new governance structures, new ways of measurement in terms of performance management, the role of the Scrutiny Committee. I would stress at this point that in terms of the pre-scrutiny, which I think was particularly helpful, I had approached the chair of the Scrutiny Committee to say that there was no need for a recommendation from scrutiny to call a report in, because I wanted scrutiny to look at it, and that would have been a recommendation if we'd had cabinet first and scrutiny afterwards. As it was pre-scrutiny, and I think that's probably been the best way to do this. So what is in this report lays out that process, and what that does is it is based, in terms of that strategy, on what we know about the failure of compliance. There's still more scrutiny work to be done around that. There'll be more information which will be coming forward in December around the issues relating to compliance. And in that sense, you can be assured, and all members of the council can be assured, and the public can be assured, and tenants organisation can be assured that they're with us on this journey, and that they can scrutinise, and actually we welcome that, because we want the very best outcomes and the very best services to make up for the deficiencies in compliance, which is why we're here on a Friday afternoon having this extraordinary cabinet meeting. Are there any other comments? I'm going to allow another couple of questions. Judith, have you anything you wanted to add at all?
Yes, taking the words that Councillor Harris said, to continue to be open, transparent and update when necessary. I would like to know the reason why, when the review first took place in June, and that the council referred itself to the housing standards, and even brought consultants on board, it wasn't till the 14th of October that members were actually told of the situation, along at the same time as tenants were. I think, from June, July, August, September, October, it's quite a long time for this to have been going on, and we knew nothing about it. And so I do welcome the commitment to more open and transparency and keeping people informed, but I do think there was a time when we weren't kept informed, and I think we should have been.
I think there's an issue of timeliness about notifying all of the members of the council and our tenants. I'm going to ask Lou just to pick up on the narrative around that, and I or Gail will make a further comment on it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hubbard. To give you just a bit of background, we started with a high-level review in late May, early June, and some of the early findings gave us some concerns. We instructed cover this evening to report for us, and Beacon Consultancy to report for us on fire. During July, we felt that given what we'd already learned, that we were recommending to the leader and to the deputy leader that we should make a referral to the regulator. We should make a self-referral. We worked with the regulator during August and September whilst we were waiting for those findings to come together. We provided them with more information, took their feedback, shared our plans for moving forward, and you'll know we cascaded that information out, tenants first, and alongside you as members. And I mean, you'll know from the regulator's findings that they've served the regulatory notice, but they've given some reassurance and their confidence around the plans that we have in place moving forward. So that was a kind of walkthrough of how that took place.
Okay, Lucy?
Yeah, there's been quite a few mentions of tenants not allowing access. What kind of percentage of this is due to tenants not allowing access, roughly?
Lou?
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I don't know, Councillor Galvin, for today, but I can find that information for you.
Any cabinet comments at the moment? Judith, any other question you'd like to ask at this stage? I mean, there'll be more questions to be able to ask when we go below the line. But if there's anything you'd like to ask now?
I didn't really get an answer to my second one, which was why weren't we informed during that time when money was being spent, when things were being found out that were really crucial? And I think that I feel very let down that I was kept in the dark all of that time. And was it that you didn't trust ordinary members with the information when you weren't in a position ready to give it to the tenants? I mean, I just would like to know what was the thinking behind keeping us in the dark for at least 3 months, from July to October.
There are no ordinary members, Judith, but I'll just pass on to Stephen. I may make a comment after he's made his points.
I mean, as Louise has said, it took an amount of time to develop a picture, a clear picture of the situation. And this started, as Lou said, in May, from a new executive director asking the right questions of her service, not getting the answers she needed straight away, and then digging deeper into that. And the timeline through the summer was a process of us collecting more information, working with the regulator. Due to the sensitive nature of this issue, we needed to be really, really certain of the situation before we informed tenants, because we absolutely needed to, not go out before we knew the situation. So that it essentially took time to build up the evidence. So when we had a clear picture, that's when we informed councillors, and that's when we informed the residents.
I don't think there would have been any merit in having a situation where we present too early uncertainties about the quality of our compliance, the scale of the lack of compliance, because that then raises all sorts of questions which are difficult to answer at that stage. Myself, Deputy Leader, Housing Portfolio Holder, we were given an early indication that may be a problem. Cabinet, as the executive body of the council, was then informed that there was a situation, but we were waiting necessarily for the full scoping of that to be able to move forward, self-refer ourselves to the social housing regulator, and then provide information to all council colleagues. I have to say that the 17,000 letters we sent out to our tenants and our leaseholders, very small numbers of people responded, and they didn't need to respond because we said we'll contact you. We've got everything in hand. Those letters landed well, and I think, Gail, that would be something that, I mean, to be honest, we were perhaps a bit surprised. We weren't sure how many people would be in touch with us, but actually the numbers were low, and that indicated that the way we had sent out the message, which had been carefully crafted, reflected as good a body of knowledge as we could provide, meant that our tenants were informed. And of course, all of this is about the well-being of our tenants as a priority. Gail.
I've just come in on the amount of work which was done to inform our tenants and leaseholders in a calm and informative way. It took quite a long while to pull that letter together, I'd have to say. It took a lot of work. But we opened up a number of channels for these people or tenants and leaseholders to contact us if they wanted to. So there was information on the website, there was a specific email address, there was a telephone line. We even opened a telephone line on the Saturday morning because we were concerned in case people were working and that would be their first chance to talk to us. Even after 2 letter drops of 17,000, giving different information, we had less than 100 contacts across all those modes of media inquiries. And not all of those were about compliance, I'd have to say. And people we also sent a TLC out, which I did an introduction to, and there was a lot of information in there. And I know people did read it because people have commented to me. But I think our residents and leaseholders have appreciated that we've tried to be as open as we can. But there was no point until we knew that what we were actually talking about, there was no point in going out early. And while this was all being done, work was being done in the background. It wasn't that we weren't doing work to try and to help the situation. So I think we did a good job of contacting our tenants and our leaseholders, and that we will continue to do that.
Okay. Lucy, one more for the moment.
So, do you anticipate any legal action, taking any as council or any action against you? Is that factored into your plans? Because it's quite possible it's good that we haven't had anything, as I understand it, although I'm not sure I was told if there was, but there doesn't seem to have been any bad repercussions from this, but because the nature of these checks they are sort of life or death checks, really. That's why they're done, because they're so important. So do you anticipate any kind of, because if 10 years of electricity checks not being done, I don't know what kind of limitations there are on that, but do you anticipate anyone coming forward? And do you anticipate actually taking action against the people that should have delivered compliance?
Do we have a legal view on that? I mean, the fact is that, as the social housing regulator said, there were detrimental effects to the health and safety of our residents. I certainly think if we had failed to refer ourselves to the social housing regulator when we knew that there were compliance failures and sort of muddle along, keep our fingers crossed, try and sort out the backlog behind the curtain, as it were, metaphorically speaking, then that would have been a highly problematic situation. The fact is that we referred ourselves. We have the confidence of the social housing regulator that we have a plan to deal with these issues. And in the letters that we sent out to our residents, they had every means of contacting us. And of course, we are actively contacting and dealing with that backlog, and that work was going on even before we put in the self-referral to the housing regulator. Lou, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I can. unless the monitoring officer wants to make a comment, I can, unless you want to.
I'm conscious that to actually give a proper response to the question is not something we can do in a public session anyway, so maybe something you want to touch on if you were to go into exam session.
Okay, thank you. But I think that transparency and those assurances were the right things to do, and the energy and the resources which are referred to in this report to deal with that compliance issue in a timely and effective way, demonstrates the council's sense of its obvious obligations and to get on with that work. And that's why this is a forward-looking report. In the way you're raising a question about, properties that are not compliant. Actually we're getting on with that job, and so to divert energies in a sort of exercise in retrospection would mean that the resources that we are working to deploy would be deployed less effectively. And so our focus, as I've said already, and the colleagues have said, is at the residents in our houses, or at least them from us. Okay, so I think we've heard a number of issues, and what I want to do now is just helpfully, because we will come back to the recommendations after we've gone into the exempt item, is to just run through the very helpful recommendations from the Scrutiny Committee. And there is one that does refer to confidential items for the Chair and Committee and the Executive Director to determine the mechanism to inform the Scrutiny Committee of progress with regards to any matters that are confidential. And of course, we're very happy to do that. And so that's the first recommendation. The second, that a report coming to Scrutiny Committee in early summer on the progress in delivering services referred to in the report following the transfer to NCS Limited. That the Housing Compliance Board regularly updates the Tenant Improvement Panel on its progress in securing compliance with required housing standards. That Cabinet consider how compliance and safety risks are reflected in the Council's risk register. And finally, the provision of training to councils on contract management, compliance and performance management. That is reviewed. So those are the recommendations that came from Scrutiny. I'll take them with all the other recommendations, but I think I can anticipate that these will be positively received by Cabinet colleagues, and they were very helpful recommendations. So I'm now going to go on to exclusion of the public. We need to vote on that. Councillor Kendrick has to leave us for this, and we'll call him back in when we come back above the line for the recommendations. Could I have an indication that we are happy to exclude the public? This is just Cabinet members. Thank you very much. So Sorry about that. Obviously don't want to get the wrong side here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the recommendations now. And so if we've got 5 recommendations from Scrutiny Committee. I'll just take this first of all. Are we happy to support those recommendations? Can all cabinet members indicate, please? Thank you very much. And then we've got a comprehensive range of recommendations on pages 5 and 6. Can we endorse those? Thank you very much.